In the name of God, the merciful and clement, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, Your Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to address this august assembly on behalf of a new Algeria that wants to build a democratic system that meets the aspirations of its people. The Algerian people indeed have demonstrated, have given an excellent example protecting the values of justice and democracy, and I would like to first express wishes of success to Mr. Volkan Bozkir, President of the 75th General Assembly, following His Excellency Mr. Mohamed Tajibandi. We would like to praise him for his very successful presidency of the previous session of the General Assembly. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for his tireless efforts. Our organization was founded following a horrific human tragedy. Its role and its performance have experienced both successes and failures in the face of constantly increasing number of international challenges. These challenges have demonstrated certain flaws in the international system of relations, especially in the current sanitary crisis. Mr. President, we need a strong United Nations, and we would like to underscore how important it is to continue implementing the comprehensive reforms in our organization in order to improve its performance and enhance its effectiveness. Algeria, on this point, would like to stress its attachment to the position of the African Union. In accordance with the Sirte Declaration, and we call on the start of intergovernmental negotiations on the topic of an equitable representation within the Security Council and on the increase in its membership, in addition to other related topics. This in order to achieve rapid results. 58 years ago, my country became a member of the United Nations, and since then, our country has constantly defended international peace and security. Our foreign policy has always been based on the values of peaceful resolution of conflicts, non-interference in the internal affairs of states, respect for sovereignty and unity of states, as well as respect for the rights of peoples to determine their future. And we are proud of our foreign policy, which has seen an important role of Algerian diplomacy in resolving a number of international crises and regional conflicts. Our diplomats have always been mobilized in the service of this goal, and our diplomats have always adhered to the resolutions of the United Nations, and based on this approach, Algeria has always worked and will work on achieving rapprochement of the various Libyan stakeholders. We call on our Libyan brothers to work together under the auspices of the UN in order to overcome its current crisis and to meet the aspirations of the Libyan people, and also to reject any foreign intervention which might undermine the sovereignty of Libya. Algeria welcomes the two recent ceasefire declarations. And we call on the parties involved to now move from words to deeds as soon as possible. My country is closely following the very delicate situation in Mali. This country's a neighbor and a brother, and we look forward to a rapid restoration of the constitutional order through a consensus-based transition which will enshrine the will of the Malian people and its aspiration towards stability, security, and development. We remain convinced that the agreement for peace and national reconciliation that resulted from the Algiers process remains an ideal framework to meet the challenges of political governance and economic development in this brethren country, Mali. And the international community will need to offer its wholehearted support. Now, as far as the Palestinian cause, for Algeria, for its Algerian and our people, this is a sacred cause. It is perhaps the most important issue, and we would like to express our wholehearted support for the Palestinian people and for its just cause and the rights of its people that should not be compromised. We call on the establishment of an independent sovereign state with Al-Quds as its capital. We believe that this is the key to stability in the entire Middle East. Now, I'd like to touch upon the issue of Western Sahara. We deplore the obstacles that have been put in the way of resolving this issue, in particular the stop to negotiations between the two parties in the conflict and the delays in designating a new special envoy of the United Nations for Western Sahara. Algeria calls on the implementation of the relevant resolutions of the Security Council, especially for organizing the referendum on self-determination in Western Sahara, which has been continually postponed for over 29 years. It is essential to designate an envoy of the Secretary General and to foster negotiations between the two parties to the conflict with the purpose of meeting the hopes of the Arab people of the Maghreb and Africa. Mr. President, Algeria would like to renew its engagement in combating terrorism and violent extremism. This is a phenomenon which is a major threat to peace, security, and to development throughout the world. We call on strengthening international cooperation in combating corruption and money laundering while being vigilant in implementing the international agreements on this topic, in particular the giving back to people funds that have been stolen. Now, we are very committed to promoting international peace, and so my country is actively involved in international efforts in the area of disarmament and non-proliferation. Algeria has suffered and still suffers from the negative effects of nuclear tests that were conducted on its territory during the colonial period. The complete elimination of nuclear weapons remains, to our mind, the only guarantee of dealing with the threat that they represent for humankind. Algeria attaches a great deal of importance to the environment, and we would like to renew our commitment to the agreements in this area. We are making efforts at the national level in spite of our limited resources, in particular by including environmental aspects in our public policies of the state. As far as the historic responsibility of developed countries with regard to this topic, we once again call on them to strengthen their technical and financial support to developing countries so that developing countries can cope with the environmental threats that they are facing. Mr. President, Algerian women took part in the national revolution and in fighting terrorism. Algerian women continue to play a very important role in the process of national rebuilding. This is an extremely important primordial role, and Algeria has always fostered and promoted this role, of course, without forgetting the important role of young people and the participation of young people in public life. Now, difficult circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic have not deterred Algeria from striving to implement sustainable development goals. And in this context, my country is finalizing the establishment of a national framework for indicators of progress regarding the path covered towards the SDGs, implementation of SDGs. We are also working on integrating in the near future the Sustainable Development Agenda in our annual budgetary laws, and we're also working on establishing a legal framework which is aimed at promoting and facilitating the work of all stakeholders involved in this process. Mr. President, Algeria is striding forward in strengthening our pillars of democracy, the rule of law, and social justice. And in the wake of the democratic change that was achieved by the peaceful demonstration movement, which led to presidential elections in December of 2019. These elections reaffirmed the sovereignty of the Algerian people, the freedom of it in its choice, and freedom of its decisions. Algeria, over the past few months, and in spite of the very difficult sanitary situation, has made important strides in the area of economic, political, and social reforms. These reforms are aimed at building a strong, safe, and prosperous Algeria. And in this context, Algeria will organize a Ruda next November, a referendum on the draft reform of the Constitution in order to determine the foundation of the democratic and political regime which will guarantee the protection of rights and freedoms and which will ensure the balance between the various branches of government. Now, the choice of that date is very symbolic and represents our respect for the sacrifices of the martyrs who perished, who died, so that we could live and so that a free and independent Algeria can continue to exist. Lastly, Mr. President, we would like to make an appeal to unity, an appeal to solidarity, to overcome our various differences and in order to cope with a very difficult situation the world is facing, so that our countries and our peoples overcome it, and so that we can continue our road towards stability, security, and development. Thank you very much for your attention. May the blessings of God be upon you. Thank you.